immortality being his very essence, and expansion constituting its majestic nature. And the soul, this monad, was once an integer of God himself, was set forth by his fiat, became incarnated in an individual, separated and distant from, yet having strong affinities for, all things material, stronger for all things spiritual, and for its brethren, and attraction towards the ultimate source, stronger than all else beside. Here, then, I lay a bare to the very cornerstone of the splendid temple of progress, whose foundations laid in time, but whose turns catch the gleam of the eternal suns of suns, whose warming rays diffuse themselves over every starry island in the tremendous ocean of being. Intuition is but an awakening of the inmost soul to the active personal consciousness of what it to be known by the virtue of its divine genesis. Suffering appears to be one means towards this awakening, and the consequent intensification of the individuality. The passions of man, labor, and evil are also agents to this end. Man is beset by evil on all sides, doubtless to the end that, in shunning it and conserving the selfhood, he may effect the earliest possible completion and rounding out of his entire being, and, consequently, be all the better prepared to encounter the immense destiny that lies before him in the hereafter. I gazed upon the man within the chamber. The weather to him, but not to me, for I was totally unaffected, seemed to be oppressively warm, and it was exceedingly difficult for him, after a while, to overcome the solemn and drowsy influence thus induced, and prevent himself from falling asleep. However, he made strenuous efforts to conquer the tendency, and for a time it was mastered. But, in the single struggle between himself and the slumber fay, a secret was disclosed to me, and another beautiful arcanum of the human economy revealed. The student of these pages will remember that erewhile I mentioned the astonishing fact, one of great value to all who think, that I was perfectly disembodied soul during the experience now recounted, and did behold at one time the same time both the external and internal parts whatever my glance fell upon. The reader will perhaps arrive at a clearer understanding of what is here meant to be conveyed if this double power is to be illustrated. A person may look through one glass face at several others, many-colored within it, and last of which contains the image of a man, and still finer glass, his eyes resting upon the surface of each particular vase, yet at the same time penetrating and grasping the whole. Thus, it was in this present case I saw, and what obtained the student in the room obtains all immortal beings, the clothes. Beneath the clothing his body, the interfilling that, as water does a sponge, I beheld the spiritual man. Here, let me define a few terms. Body is that which is purely material, corporeal, dense, weighable, atomical, and particled. Spirit is a thing of triplicity. In the most external sense, that which interpenetrates, flows through, from, and constitutes the life of material existence is spirit. Second, the great menstruum in which the universe floats and has its being is spirit, but vastly different from the foregoing. And third, the mental operations as well as their results are spiritual, a man's thought, for instance. Great care must be taken to distinguish the last two from the first, which is the effluvium from or surrounding aura of the material forms and things. Soul is that more stately principle in things which thinks, feels, tastes, sees, knows, aspires, suffers, hates, loves, fears, calculates, and enjoys. Hoping that these definitions will be retained and that my meaning only will be given in terms used, we now will proceed. I became a rapt observer, not of man in study as a person, but as a rare mechanism. The clothes we wore emitted a dull, faint, leaden-hued cloud, perfectly transparent, and extending about 3 inches from the surface in all directions. His body was apparently composed of orange-colored flame, and the emanations reached to the distance of 15 feet on all sides. It penetrated the woodwork, walls, chairs, tables, all which came in contact. And I noticed 2 facts. First, that its form was oblate spheroid, and second, that a portion of it adhered to whatever he touched. Thus, it is true that a man leaves a portion of himself wherever he may chance to go. This explains why a dog is enabled to trace his master through the streets of a crowded city. When the man rose to silence the noise of his children, I discerned the form of his sphere in the center of a similar one which every created being stands. Its poles were at the head and the feet, and its equator, whose bulge exceeding the polar dimensions about 1/40th, was directly on the plane of the abdominal center. This sphere penetrated that of the clothes, and although it was so marvelously fine, still it, like an implar, a large soap bubble, appeared to be particled or heterogeneous. Within the physical body of the man there was a second, itself constituting another human form. Like that was the vase within a vase. And the substance of this last was beautiful and pearly. Its mass was apparently in perfect coalescence, indivisible, atomless, and unparticled. This was the man's true shell, his house, his home, the outbirth of but not the man himself. And now the question is asked me, what constitutes the ego? What is the man? The answer is, soul is a thing sui generis and unique. Sight, taste, and the senses generally are some of its properties. Reflection, reason, fancy are a few of its qualities. Judgment is prerogative. Physical scenes, its theater. Earthly experiments, its school. And the second life, its university, whence it will graduate to what? This shall by and by be answered. Time is but one of the vast multitudes of other phases of existence through which it yet must pass. We know something about its propensities, powers, methods, and qualities, but only a very little about the soul itself. We realize somewhat of its accidents and incidents, and not much else beside. Most assuredly, modern spiritualism has not abided much to our knowledge. It may do so in the future, but some of us who do not like to wait